Hi, I'm Andrew, and this is the best way you can spend $1,000. Let's start with a little bit of backstory. My family just got a new house in Atlanta, and when I came downstairs, I noticed that it had a room that just was begging for a home theater setup. There are already speakers in the ceiling, these speakers behind me, in the walls, and cables routed for a TV. Now, those cables are ancient, but there's an easy way to work around that. Just run a new cable. So I figured, why not do some scrounging in Facebook Marketplace and see what I can come up with. Now this right here is a star of the show. This is a Sony STR-ZA1100ES, which is about 10 years ago, $1,000 AVR. I was able to pick it up for $130 off someone on Facebook Marketplace, and then I had to drop about $40 to $50 on the calibration mic off eBay because he didn't have it sitting around. For anyone who doesn't know, that calibration mic that I just showed you there, that is what allows a Sony AVR to, well, calibrate the sound to your room. So it plays a succession of test signals, which it then does some fancy math to figure out how best it should match the volumes of your different speakers and set the EQ so that it sounds good. Because every room's going to have some problems and some differences. Mine has a big gap here that leads to my bedroom, a big dresser over here, a cloth carpet, and all sorts of other things that are going to make the sound signature interesting. And so it does calculations to figure out how to adjust for that. If you look closely, you can see that there's some fans on top of it. That's a $24 kit of just dual 140mm fans I picked up off Amazon that run over USB power to this so that when the amp turns on, they turn on. That just helps it stay cool because these speakers right here are 4 ohms and technically this guy's rated for 6 to 16 ohms, so it'll heat up. Word of warning about that impedance mismatch. On this particular AVR, it's mostly fine because it's a very well-built AVR. But if you're running a cheaper module, you do not want to run a 4 ohm speaker on an 8 ohm AVR. You can kill the AVR, you can potentially kill your speakers, it's just not a good time. So if you're buying everything new, take the time to check the impedances and make sure they match. Screen I found from Side Televisions, whom you can find on Facebook Marketplace, so I'll have them linked below. This Sony XR8B Bravia OLED for $360. Now this is a WOLED panel, so it doesn't quite have those amazing contrast specs of a quantum dot OLED like what you could get in a Sony A95L or some of Samsung's offerings, but $1,000, I didn't want to spend $500 even though that TV was like $4,000 if you were to buy it new. It's hard to see, but the TV's mounted with a $50 Amazon wall mount. It is adjustable out, but I got it set up exactly how I like it, so I don't want to articulate it. And, it's a perfectly reasonable mount. This one gave me enough clearance and adjustability that I knew I could get it set up right because my studs were not aligned for some of the other ones. You see, if you don't have your studs aligned right, your TV is going to fall off. And some houses have 8-inch spacing, some have 12, some have 24, some have 16. It's just kind of all over the place. And this guy's nice because it gives you 8, 12, 16, and 24-inch spacing, I believe. This guy right here is an old Alienware Area 51 that I got off a friend. It was broken, so I fixed it. He said I could have it because he didn't use it anymore. And that is obviously an extreme windfall. So you probably won't be able to find something with like a 1080 Ti just kicking around for free, but you can probably find an old office PC to use to like hold your Blu-rays and that type of stuff. And then looking a little closer, you can see right back here that I have an Xbox dongle adapter to connect the controllers. And so, to go with the setup, I got one red and one blue controller to go with the old red versus blue theme of games like Halo. Now, the whole room's going to eventually be decorated in red versus blue, but right now it's not there yet. This is just the initial setup. A little thing I forgot to mention while I was down here. On the left, you can see a USB-C adapter going to a Logitech dongle, and that's connected to one of these Logitech keyboard / trackpad combination things so I can just navigate Windows. Also picked up this KVM. This is just a cheap $20 one off Amazon, but it lets me hook up the output of this PC and my NAS over here. We'll have a separate video on that eventually, so that I can go in and debug them if something just randomly breaks and doesn't want to work. For the speakers, remember these came with the house. These are Niles HD LCRs, and then back here, I'm not completely sure what these are. Gemini seemed to say there were some sort of Niles that went with it that were also pretty nice, but they're speakers, they do speaker things. And I have coming soon a center channel that's also Niles that's matched to the drivers. You ideally want your left and right surrounds on the front and your center channel to be matched because most of the audio comes through that center channel, and then the left and right, you want the crossfade to work. And I was able to find it for about $100 off eBay, and so I grabbed that so I can have a better setup and take some of the load off the AVR, because right now my left and right fronts are having to act as a fake center channel, which means they're having to do a lot more heavy lifting, and my AVR is technically not rated for 4 ohms. To be clear, these speakers back here are 8 ohms, so those aren't a problem. It's just the ones in the front that are a little questionable. It's most of the big stuff that we're dealing with, but you do have to keep into account how everything's wired. And there's some interesting problems with this. The wiring setup here is a little bit interesting. So if you look back here, you see this massive blue cable. Like, that's just ridiculously large, and that's actually an old HDMI cable that was run through that conduit with all of the speaker cable when it was originally put in the house. Slight problem. Believe it or not, an HDMI cable from the early 2000s is not going to support a 4K TV, especially with HDR, 60 FPS, any of that. So that's not what we're using anymore. Instead, I have a 30-foot fiber optic, about $30, HDMI 2.1 cable coming out of the 1080 Ti and into the TV. Now, unfortunately, the 1080 Ti only supports HDMI 2.0B, which means I can do 4K 60 with HDR or 4K 120 without that, and even 4K 60 with HDR, you have to mess with the color space a little bit, but it works quite well. It just means that if I want my lossless audio, which, like, I do, I have to run a separate cable coming off of one of the DisplayPort ports. So I've got an active DisplayPort to HDMI adapter here. That's very important. Passive will not work for this. That then runs into your HDMI cable that runs into the AVR. And then the AVR is able to get lossless audio, so I can experience the full Dolby Atmos surround sound, fancy audio stuff. You might be asking yourself, what's the point of all this? Sure, you've shown a way to spend a lot of money on a lot of cool tech, but how's it going to benefit me? And well, let me show you. Although I'm not sure how well my camera's going to capture this. Now, I have no idea how well you're going to be able to see or hear this, but I have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order fired up on here, and as you can tell, TV lights up the entire room, and the deepness of the black when the pixels aren't illuminated is incredible. That's what an OLED will do for you. And, you know, any decent OLED will do this, but I've never experienced an OLED before, so to me, this is mind-boggling. Now, I don't have this game's sound configured quite properly. It's set to stereo right now, not 5.1.2, because I also don't have my center channel yet. But look at the contrast there. In the dark scenes, contrast between the light and in the back, and I don't know how much you can make this out on the camera, but it's exemplary. And then you pull out the lightsaber, lights up, and I'm going to do terribly here, but the lights doesn't make you a better gamer, for sure, but it does look really cool. See if I can get these last few guys. Ah, he got me before my force attack landed. But, in my opinion, it's amazing. Okay, let's go ahead and see the total damages. So the AVR was 130, the calibration microphone about 51, XR8B 360 was the TV. And just to clarify, the reason it was so much cheaper, normally these go for like $1,200, is because it just had some super minor scratching on it. You can't even see it unless you're really trying to look at it, and you never notice what the TV's on. TV mount was 5226. Another quick clarification, that actually does not support 8-inch spacers, only 12, 16, 24. The DP to HDMI adapter was $10. Fiber optic HDMI cable, $28.30. AVR fans are $26.13. Bluetooth keyboard, $27. KVM 1951 assorted HDMI cables, $25. Xbox controllers, $95 to $96. Xbox dongle, $20, and the center channel, another $104. So total, $948.32. So to wrap things up, our total was just under $1,000, but we cheated a little because we already had the speakers and I got the PC for free. So if you were wanting to do this at home for $1,000, what you're going to want to do is go find Linus Tech Tips videos on the $69 gaming PC. Follow that for how to get a cheap gaming PC setup, and then buy used controllers. I bought brand new ones because I kind of prefer to make sure those feel good. I don't like the feeling of like any grease or whatever on one, just because it's kind of a sensory thing. But you can save a lot of money there, or just not rock controllers at all, or especially if you already have an Xbox, you can just use that. If all you're going is for the speakers, 360 for the TV, 130 for the AVR, about 500 bucks, then add in some speakers, that's $500 to spend on just the speakers. You can easily do this for $1,000, and it is really cool. Now, I don't want to make this video too long, but I hope it served to give you a good idea of what exactly we're playing with here and just what you can do for about $1,000. I'm going to be continually, throughout the next few months, putting a little bit of money at a time, think about like $20 to $50, into cool little modifications you can do throughout here. So temperature sensor for the server closet, automations to be able to have everything fire on up and off with a press of one button, trying to get windows to be able to preserve monitors to not move between them, and other just really cool things. So if you're interested, hit like, hit subscribe, come along for the ride. I'm going to be trying to building things for a reasonable budget on top of this. Try to find ways to show that once you've got a good foundation, the sky's the limit.